This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000houses.com podcast. I'm here with AJ Osborne, and this guy owns millions of square feet of storage facilities, and it seems to be a very romantic topic. So I have some storage facilities, but this guy dwarfs me. But let me tell you, you don't have to be that big to make a great living in the storage business. And also, as a side note, I'm always talking about I do about 100 houses a year or whatever. You don't have to do 100 houses to make a great living in the house flipping business. So, this is something I have evolved to over 20 years. But I'm real excited to talk to AJ. How you doing?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Hey, I need to pay homage to my sponsor, taxfreefuture.com. If you do not have a self-directed retirement account where you can tax defer forever or tax defer for a long period of time and grow your wealth without paying taxes, you have no idea the size of the tool that you are missing out of your tool belt. So go to taxfreefuture.com, watch the little 37 video vignettes, and learn how you can grow your retirement tax deferred or tax free, even for a big head start and a jump on everybody else. There's a reason why they're always complaining the rich people don't pay any taxes. I said, well, those laws are available and those loopholes are available to everybody. I say they're loopholes. They're not loopholes. They just understand how to use the tax code to their advantage. And the tax code is there to give incentive to entrepreneurs to go out there without a net and generate tax revenue more than they could ever pay. And so if you look at it like this, you kind of get a commission, which is you have reduced taxes for causing so much taxation. And that's the simplest way I know to put it. So tax-free future is one of those things that can help you grow and expand. And then the government doesn't have to take care of you at the other end of your age because you've taken care of yourself. So taxfreefuture.com, check it out. All right, I paid the bills, AJ, so I'll thank you for giving me that time there. So let's start out with this. We were talking before we got on here, and I'm a high school graduate, don't have any real formal education. I like to tell everyone I graduated from La Calle U. So about 65% of my town in San Antonio, Texas, is Hispanic, and La Calle means the street. So I got a degree from getting my ass kicked up and down the street. It's the most expensive college in the world, and it will take everything you have and spit on you instead of encouraging you. So talk about your beginnings.
Yeah, I'm a Idaho boy. So my parents, my father grew up in extreme poverty. And when I say extreme poverty, most people today don't even understand what that is. He didn't have running water. He didn't have, anything. He ate his first meal that was, from a restaurant or something when he was, it was like 11, and it was a hamburger from like McDonald's. And that was the first time he'd ever eaten out. So, they ate by poaching. And then my mom was a farm girl. And so we, grew up in just little old Idaho, and he got into insurance and I followed his way. He wanted to get out of that life, obviously. And so he started selling insurance. And we moved to Boise, Idaho, which was the capital of the city, or the state. But when I grew up, Idaho had something like 600,000-700,000 people in it. It was teeny. That's changed. It's amazing how the economic changes that are going on in the United States. And as you're in San Antonio, the exodus from California has just exploded Texas and Idaho.
I hope they don't Californicate us, but you know what I mean? Hopefully they're moving here for the right reasons. So bring your guns, bring your entrepreneurial capitalistic ideas and come. But if you're just coming here,
you can bring your guns too. So that's fine by me. You're right. It causes a lot of friction here in the state because people are upset about it. And what you're seeing is, and what I saw growing up was things that, I was living in a society that was changing, and it was changing rapidly. We can't house people fast enough here. As I was growing up and seeing this city, I hunted out of my backyard. Like I'd wake up in the morning and hearing the geese flying, right? And I'd pull my shotgun out from underneath my bed and I'd walk out the back door and take my dog out to go hunt, right? That's where I live. That same location today is in the epicenter of the city. And it's the biggest road in the entire state, right? And it's the fastest growing area in the United States. And it has hit the top list in like 6 times or whatever. So I grew up in an interesting area, and I think that really shaped a lot of things that I knew, right? Like, I grew up and my parents didn't put blinds in the house for 4 years because they didn't think they could afford blinds. Even though my dad had a good job, we weren't poor. I didn't grow up poor, but it was that kind of mentality and this understanding. So I grew up and really got into sales. I wanted to follow my dad's footsteps because sales gave me what I felt control, right? I could be control over my income. And so I came from this interesting background where I was never accustomed to any kind of wealth, things like that. We didn't see fancy cars. We didn't see, that stuff didn't exist, right? But at the same time, I also grew up with a background that knew that sales, that I could make whatever kind of money I wanted, as in there was no cap. And I think this set a good foundation for me and my father, who's now my business partner. And we own multiple companies. I own 3 online businesses. I own a health brokerage, health and welfare insurance brokerage firm that I started. And I own a self-storage company, which comprises over 100 million in assets across 5 different states. And this was all done by just us, no investors. So, you know, when I started looking around and started to see this, let me take a step back. I got married and we were having kids and everything. And I realized that sales was limited. So I loved the sales because I felt like there was no ceiling. But at the end of the day, I learned after doing sales, it was still a treadmill, right? I mean, I'm still out there selling and I got to sell. You got to eat.
So my father was the same way. I think maybe you had the same thing. They were depression babies. And so they had this mindset that was ingrained to them for a long time of scarcity. I mean, we've saved every styrofoam cup that ever came from anywhere. We saved every pickle jar that we emptied. You know, I don't know. We have it was just kind of that mentality. My dad was in sales too. And talking about treadmill, he made a good living and he wasn't absolutely capped, but there was a limit to where you could go. Yeah. The biggest thing was if you started making too much money, they would divide his territory in half and tell him start over again now and build this, you know. So that got discouraging, you know, like right when you get your income, like, wow, I'm really kicking ass. The company goes, this man's making a hell of a lot of money right now. We're going to cut his region in half and make him start over again. Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, there's only so much time you got. I can only sell so many, right? And so what I found and I learned early in my career was that sales, you can't compound. I can't compound sales because I have no control or ownership over that revenue, right? Because it's a client and they can fire me anytime they want. And I'm capped on time. This was the difference, not income. Time was limited. Only so much I could do. So once I started realizing this, I decided there is a ceiling. Right? It's not a self-imposed ceiling. It's a economic and it's a time. Yeah. And so that ceiling that I realized, and if I wanted to grow, and plus there was a self-imposed force or mandate upon me for action. So instead of what I thought was being financially free, and, you know, sky's the limits, I actually realized I became a slave to my sales job and that there was a huge cap because I couldn't compound it. And so that's what really started to attract me to real estate because I could buy something, own it, and then go do it again and again and again and repeat the process. And it stacks. And the first things that I buy, the first things that I own are disassociated with my time. After that, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with my time. So I can just keep bringing in the money and it'll compound out. So I want the listeners to pay attention. Now, people, he painted with a really broad stroke right there. I mean, you can get into real estate strategies that are the same, like wholesaling. You can do it once, you got to do it again. You're going to fix it up and flip it and get a check, a one-time cash event. I mean, then you're still in that same situation. So even in real estate, you have to look at your strategies. Am I buying something that if I make a good deal makes money and forever, or until I say I want to sell it? Or is it a one-time event and then I got to go do it again and again and again? That's more like sales. So make sure you're looking at your strategies and that
in the beginning, we're all just kind of flipping or trying to make some cash or get above or get our head above water.
Bingo.
But then after you get comfortable, it's like, where are the strategies where I do one thing right and it pays forever, or until I decide to sell that forever cash stream, for a lot. So just be aware of the two different mindsets.
Exactly. And they go hand in hand. And so, people that are really wealthy, they do both. And they use one to propel the other. So, and two, if you're owning and holding and you have this compounding effect, not only does it build wealth while paying you, but the tax benefits are incredible. And so, we started looking at this, and I realized that if I made the exact same amount in real estate as I did my sales job, I actually made twice as much. And the reason being is taxes. And so when we started doing everything and ended up, it just made a lot of sense. So we went down that road, and I started out, but for a lot of people, we own some commercial, single family house things, but I was very used to businesses, and I did B2B sales. I consulted with businesses and focused a lot on revenue management. So I wanted to go into an asset class that gave me more levers to control the revenue. And I felt very limited on certain types of real estate assets. And so for me, and it's different for everybody, but for me, self-storage made a lot of sense because operationally speaking, I could control a lot more. I could do marketing, revenue management, dynamic pricing. I could sell insurance. I could sell boxes, moving trucks. There's a lot of ways for me to improve the revenue of that business. And in the early 2000s, that was kind of my philosophy. Self-storage isn't a real estate asset. It's a business that has all the benefits of real estate. And under that kind of philosophical approach, we would buy real estate assets, turn them into well-run businesses, and the income would explode. And alongside with the wealth, we'd refinance into non-recourse loans, take the money and do it again. And we did this to over 100 million. And so we started doing this. This was going great, right? It was awesome. I worked for a large insurance brokerage company based out of Chicago. I had this great, sales paying job, and real estate was exploding. And then for, any of your listeners that have ever heard me on Bigger Pockets or any other podcast, know that my treadmill, so to speak, or my life stopped. One day out of the blue, my legs started to hurt. Then they stopped working, and I couldn't walk. And this was completely out of the blue. It was 2-3 days after that, everything stopped working. I couldn't breathe. I was put into a coma, and I was put on life support. And when I woke up out of my coma, I was paralyzed from head to toe, staring at a wall on breathing tubes, feeding tubes, and every other kind of tubes. And that's where I lied.
Can I stop you right there? I know this is not like right down the beaten path of what the topic's supposed to be here, but how scary is that? What was going through your head when you wake up and you can't move, and you're cognizant but you can't move?
Yeah.
What? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I not only could I not move, but my entire body was basically viewing as it had been exploded. So I was in immense pain that they couldn't stop with painkillers. So most of the time it was just pure living hell. It was just, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't communicate. So it was basically, I was stuck in a paralyzed body. All my nerves were ripped apart, and they were telling my brain that you're on fire, you're blowed up, everything's ripped apart. And every single one of my nerves in my body was telling my brain, yeah, we're in trouble. And so it was pretty much for, 10 weeks, just mass pain and mass survival mode. It was just trying literally not to die and waking up and thinking, I'm not dead yet. Right. And so that went on for a long time. And then after that, they finally we got things a little more in control. And then I I gained after 10 weeks a little power in my lungs to where they could change my breathing tubes that came out of my neck in a way that they trached. So they cut my neck and put the tubes in my neck. They changed it so they could move the air and I could speak. So I could speak. They'd let me speak for whatever it was, like a minute a day, right? And but then we started to get in control. And then from there, it was just, I mean, you're just on survival mode. It's just, you don't know what's going to happen. Am I ever going to walk again? Am I ever going to be able to hold my children? Am I going to be able to do anything like that at all? And,
so what was the name of this affliction?
It's called Guillain-Barré. And so what had happened is my white blood cells, it happens to like 1 in a million or 2 million people, something like that. It's random. It's not something you catch. It's not, it's not an autoimmune problem.
Is it hereditary?
No.
Okay.
They don't even know why the people it happens to. There's no answers. And that's really frustrating. When you're in the hospital, will I walk again? They're like, I don't know. How did I get this? I don't know. In fact, it took, I was paralyzed from the waist down and they wouldn't admit me into the hospital. I couldn't get a room in the hospital because there was nothing wrong with me, except for the fact that I was now paralyzed out of the blue. But they couldn't figure out what was going on. There's nothing wrong with me. I sat in the emergency room for 24 hours waiting for them to try to figure out what was wrong. Wasn't even in a hospital bed. And so it's not well known. And there's just not a lot of answers. All they know is this: the white blood cells get confused. So you can get it through a cold, an infection. I know a guy that it's not, you don't get it, but it's triggered. That's what they call it, triggered by sour milk or immunizations. So any of those things can trigger your white blood cells, because when you get a virus or an infection, your white blood cells kick in to go attack it, right?
Your white blood cells are attacking the good stuff. They were attacking your good body.
They get confused, and then they start attacking your nerves. And so then they start destroying your body, and they basically sever communication from your head, for your brain to your body. And so there's about 10% of the population, or 10% of the population that get Guillain-Barré, which is whatever that is, 1 in a million or 2 million. It's very, very few. Then out of that 10%, there's people that get it bad. Like your body's completely, cut off. You can't do anything. I was in that wonderful category because I'm so lucky. And so yeah, I was done. And we had a long time where we didn't know whether I was even going to communicate again. So it was like, my wife didn't know if they were going to pull the plug. It was literally just sit and wait. Even though I was totally 100% conscious, I was there. I was looking around. I was there. We couldn't communicate, couldn't do anything, but I was there. So this went on for obviously a long time. I went in, the day it happened, I was out planting trees. And, by Christmas, I was sitting in the bed looking at, the snow coming down. And that was the first time. Christmas Day was the first time that they let me go home for a couple hours.
Where was the breakthrough? Who figured it out?
So actually the breakthrough came to figure out what I had. They were arguing over what it was, and they didn't think it was neurological, but I was headed to Brazil. I used to live in Brazil. So, I was headed back down to go on a fishing excursion, and I had to get, you get those vaccines, the MMR, things like that. So I got the MMR vaccine, and they came back, and my buddy just called me and was like, "Hey, didn't you get vaccine immunizations like 2 weeks ago?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm paralyzed." Sent to the hospital. And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Maybe you should tell your doctors that." I hadn't even thought anything. So I told him, and then immediately it was like, "Oh, we know what you have." So because those are triggers, right? And so if I would have had the flu, they would have known too. The problem why they didn't know was I was perfectly healthy. They're like, "You don't have an infection. You don't have a virus. So we don't know what's wrong." Well, the virus had been put in me because that's what it is. So it's not that the immunizations caused this, right? Any virus can do it. And since those types, the MMR, the flu shot, and those have it,
it was just a combination for you that,
exactly.
Like some people are going to have a peanut and die. So,
and so that's what happened.
The reason why I want to spend some time on this is because one of the things about this podcast is I like people to explore through other people's adversity, like how things get solved or how they go through. Because, I mean, making a living and being financially free is one thing, but sometimes we just have to take care of some very basic stuff that could be tough as hell. And so I did want to hear about that story. So you recuperate, and what was the aha moment for you when you said real estate's my deal?
You know,
light bulb go off.
Yeah, it was, for me, I am very fortunate that it was before this happened. Lots of times they only figure it out after, right after these kind of things happen to them in their life. For me, though, it was also caused through adversity. I'd done a deal where I was trying to buy a insurance brokerage company, and it went really bad, really bad. We were frauded. The guy that sold it to us had his wife go out and take the clients. So it went south. And it was at that point when, in the middle of the lawsuits and this failing business and everything, where you just feel like, wow, I'm the stupidest person alive, that I realized I don't own this revenue. I'm buying these streams of revenue that I don't even own. They can go away at any time. And I'm like, this is a bad business model. And it was through that I really started focusing on, I need to own the source of the revenue. Right? I need to have, like, you know, you mentioned about financing and how you own the debt or you own the notes, right? You own it. Somebody doesn't pay you, then they're gone. And you can sell those assets and those notes to somebody else that can pay you, but you own it. And that's when the light bulb really clicked on. And it was from that point, it was 4 years later, after I went into real estate in a big way. I'd been into it, you know, but nothing, I couldn't live on it or anything else like that. Mm-hmm. And then it was 4 years after that I became completely paralyzed. So now 3 years later, I've been coming back strong. I can use my
Interesting question. Yeah. While you're down, did your assets or your business cave, or were they profitable?
They increased in value.
They made it through your
Yep. So when I got out, they made more money and were worth more money. And that's the thing that, you know, people don't. I was fired in the hospital. My boss came to visit me in the hospital, and, you know, sorry, you're paralyzed. You're done. So I wasn't even out of the hospital when I lost my job. And which is, I mean, it's not their fault. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, wow, when it happens, it's like,
every man for himself, right?
Yeah. And you really learn that, you know, W-2, once again, you do not own that source of revenue. And that's just a complete, and you know, sales is good, but a W-2 is even worse. I mean, sales is good, but a W-2 is like the worst thing in the world, because you do all the work to own the assets and you have no legal right to anything. So anyways, after that, and after I came out, I started 2-3 other companies. I started a brokerage firm and things out of my wheelchair. And then I've been coming back really good. I got out of my leg braces about 6 months ago. My lower extremities, my lower legs are still partially paralyzed, but nobody can really tell at this point. So I'm walking, things like that. I can't run, jump, nothing like that. But I live what most people would call a semi-normal life. And I work still twice as much as the average person does. And, but I can do what I like and love, but that was afforded to me because of real estate, right? If I didn't, my wife would have had it. So I went home paralyzed in a bed. My wife had to take care of me. And if not, my kids, we would have lost our house. My wife would have had to get a job. We would have had to I don't know what we would have done with our 4 children. We just had a baby 2 months before I went in the hospital. And so it's, you know, because of the real estate, we stayed home. I stayed with my kids and I got better, and I had the ability to. And then as I was getting better, my income increased, the equity increased. I could start new businesses. I had more freedom, and we are worth dramatically more now and make more money than I did when we went in.
Okay, so did you start out flipping houses or some other kind of, or did you go straight into storage business?
Straight into storage. I knew that's where we wanted to be. And so we started small, right? And fourth, fifth tier markets. I mean, I started in a city next to the Canadian border that no one's ever heard of in Idaho, Bonners Ferry. It's like 5,000 people, maybe less. I don't know. It's like, there's a gas station, right?
But the thing is that's a product that you could afford or that you could fathom achieving at the time. So that's the same with my storage places. I started out, even in the houses, I started out in the cheapest houses I could find, even though you learn later, it's just as much work to get a more expensive house, or, you know, I mean, but your payday's bigger. But, you know, everything happens to me kind of by accident, but when it's a bad thing that happens, you know, I say, well, how do I stop that from happening? And then you evolve. And then when it's a really good thing that happens, you go like, okay, how do I make that happen more often? So I accidentally bought 15 units in front of a park where they parked boats, and I didn't have any money, but they wanted $8,000 for it. And I did the math and said, well, you know, I ought to get my money back in 18 months. You know, I didn't have the money, but I went and got a credit card, and I went and got some money on my credit card, and I went and bought it, and I just sent everything in. Then I started noticing, I said, you know, this is pretty cool because there's not a hot water heater. There's not a air conditioner, you know, the things I was buying. It was pretty damn simple. It had a dirt floor, chicken wire dividers, and corrugated aluminum, and 2 doors, and, you know, one on the right and one on the left, and you back your boat in and you close it, and they would leave, and they would send me a rent check every month. And I thought, you know, this might be better than houses because, you know, they don't pay me. I keep this guy's boat, and I'm not displacing a family. I'm not having to worry about throwing grandma out on the street or anything. It's just a toy that they have that if they don't pay me, I'm going to take their toy. You know, it's a lot different than a house. And I decided early on that I was going to make my money by doing one-time cash events like fix and flips or wholesales. I was going to create cash flow by doing seller financing, and then, but all with other people's money. And then when I had money, I was going to put it in the forever cash scenario, which was for me storages too. And I said, you know, I'm going to put my money into storages, which is the only rental I ever want to own. You know, I don't want to own strip centers and commercial businesses because I've seen what happens in up and down economies. I didn't want, I mean, houses were good, apartments okay, but man, you're dealing with people in a real intricate part of their life, like where they live, where their kids go to school, if it's going to rain on them or not, you know. And so
and the laws, I mean, you live in Texas and I live in Idaho, which are friendly, but most of the United States, I mean, you're talking about if you're in, you know, half the United States, they got laws like that literally say
you can't get them out.
Yeah. And then 2, you get that was something I never wanted to be involved in and I knew that if I didn't want to evict a single mom with 3 kids out in the rain, then I shouldn't own it. That was my thing. If I can't do that, I have no business doing that. And so self-storage for me, and 2, self-storage was easier to scale for me, right? Now, you know, I mean, we're buying bankrupt super Kmart's, turning them into storage facilities. We're buying them all over the place. We've got, you know, just thousands and thousands of doors. And there's just a lot I could do. And there was a lot of, once again, these levers. I could always figure out how to make the same asset make more money. And I didn't see that in a lot of ways, in a lot of other asset classes. And the better I got at what I did, the more money I could make, right? And so for me, I love it. It's the best investment vehicle. And the economics behind it makes sense. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. This isn't about people storing junk. The economics of the United States of people actually owning homes and actually having bigger homes, right? The economics to make building, housing more expensive are in full force and always will be. The economics to make consumerism and dispersing and dividing business, last mile, point of sale, and so the things businesses have to do, those are all in favor of storage too. So we can own more, we can do more, but we need more space. Businesses are decentralizing. They need limited space, but they don't want to pay for the high cost of real estate. They don't want to be in long-term leases. This all adds to storage and where it's going. And if those things end, if the economics of that change, then the United States is going to be in a whole lot of hurt. The storage isn't going to be the thing that's going to be hurt, right? It's going to be everything. You're talking about dropping houses, and people can't afford to buy anything, and products and sales are going up and businesses failing. It's, even when a lot of those things happened, storage did good. So
okay, I was going to talk about that. So people were, the banks and everyone was calling me during the recession in 2008, whatever. It lasted, to me, it lasted 5 or 6 or 7 years. We were coming out as the last 3 years, but it was a good 4 years. It was horrible. And people were asking me how your storage is doing. I said, and I was wondering too, how they're going to do. What was happening was, as people downsize, they'll get rid of their house, or they'll downsize and move in with mom, but they're not getting rid of their crap. And they brought it right over. So, when people were growing and expanding, they had a lot of toys, they have a lot of stuff, they were in the storages. When people were downsizing and they didn't have room for their stuff, but they weren't, we're Americans, we're not giving up our stuff. Yeah. And so we'll put it in there. So I stayed pretty steady. I didn't recognize a boom ever. I just noticed steady growth. And when I like I do, I'm sure you do the same thing. Is like, how many doors do you have?
Over 8,000.
Okay, 8,000. I got 1,300. Okay, but the theory is the same. Like in my 1,300 units, everyone's going up $4 or $5 a year. You know what I mean? Or you start working it around, and by the time you get to the end of the list, it's time to start over with the increase with the first guy you started with, if they're still there. And I always like to raise my rents in San Antonio, Texas, during June, July, and August, where it's 107, where
we do it in freezing cold here.
Yeah, in the freezing cold. I was going to say, you raise your rents when it's so hot in Texas that for $4, I'm not moving.
Nobody cares. That's the thing. And the economics behind it, once again, are so favorable to the owners. Because when the downturn, there was this weird thing that banks and everybody thought that they're like, listen, nobody is going to foreclose on their house before they before they lose their storage unit. They thought that was impossible because they're like, it's not logical. You're going to lose the storage unit, which actually, in retrospect, makes no sense at all. I'm going to stop paying a $50 bill instead of a $1,500 bill. What? No. Losing the $50 storage unit has no effect on me losing the $1,500. So at the end of the day, what happens is the mortgage payment, the big debt, that's actually the first to go, because that's what actually makes an impact on your finances.
Yeah, $50. $50 isn't your problem. $100 isn't your problem. $150 is not your problem. So, if I'm going around 1,300 units in a year, I'm raising or in a 4 or 5 month period, I raise everybody $4. That's $5,200. That's $60,000 a year. I increased my income, on one spin around the clock, So
yes,
I learned to recognize the storage business. Like, there are a lot of little units and a lot of little incomes, but I can increase everybody just a little tiny bit, and it's a big number. I could only imagine if I had 8,000, 9,000 doors. I mean, just $1 increase for you would change the whole financials at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You got, when you're talking about an 8 to 9% increase, and you own an apartment building, and that 8 to 9% increase is on $1,800, and let's just call it a 10% increase, right? That's a big ticket.
That's a big increase, yeah.
That's a big increase. On my storage facilities, on $50, it's $5. Most of them don't even know there was an increase. But when you take that 10% across $100 million in assets and, millions and millions of revenue, that's a big increase for you.
And then you can even compound it by the fact that, this storage facility is not selling boxes. There's a manager there to sell boxes. How much does that increase a year? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or we sell insurance. We mandate insurance, which is mandated insurance is $7, a unit. Right. And so all of a sudden you start adding in these little things and it becomes a 15, 20% increase in revenue. So when I buy facilities, within 3 years, I want 150+% return. And I want my money out, and I want it non-recourse. I don't want risk. And then I want to repeat and do it again. And that's our model. And we do it over and over and over again.
talk to me about this non-recourse. What do you got to do to qualify for non-recourse money?
So in commercial real estate, non-recourse is actually a lot easier, but it needs to be a desirable asset. That's the thing. So non-recourse, you have to realize because they're not basing it on you, right? Because it's not dependent on you paying the bills. It's dependent on the asset paying the bills. You just have to make sure that your asset is something that they want. So if you have a decent asset that's, commercial real estate, it's performing well, then the bank's going to go, yeah, we'll do non-recourse. And then if that asset fails, I give them the keys back, right? And so it's a great way to lower your risk and build out your empire. And we didn't do that, obviously, at first. We had to be on the note and everything. And that's fine, right? But now we're in a position where, I don't know, 80% of our assets are non-recourse. And so if they fail, I just give the keys back to the bank. It has no effect on me. And I have all my money out. So
yeah. So I was hypothecating a bunch of notes, and one day we were finished with the deal. And I said, hey, I talked to my banker friend. I said, what do I got to do one of these days to be able to borrow money? I mean, where do I got to be to borrow money and have no recourse? And he said, well, if you'd have asked, you were already there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, you bastard.
No, it's true. And there's other ways you can go about it too. So if you don't want to do it, you'll be amazed when you have assets, what banks will do. And two, you got to remember between credit unions, between local banks, and between national banks, and these guys are all competing for assets.
Community banks, yeah, the local
and community banks, and people, even financiers, hard money. There's all sorts of ways you can go about this, right? Some of the big guys, they don't do non-recourse; they do bonds. So they simply just take their assets and find investors and say, "Listen, I'll pay you 4%. It's backed by the assets." So if the bond fails, they have nothing. Exactly. And so they go find just private investors that want to do it.
That's exactly what I do with my houses. I go pledge a house, and if I don't pay you, I tell them, in the conversation, I have two rights every day. I have the right to pay as agreed, or I will walk you over the deed to this place. The only time I think some people should be shot is when they collected money and then they don't send on the payment. I think that's just bullshit. So my deal is, if I ever can't pay you, which has never happened, but if I ever couldn't, I'm going to walk this deed over to you. You won't have to take me to foreclosure. You won't have to do anything.
It's yours.
It's yours. I'll bring it to you. But that's my two choices every day. So if you don't like the asset, don't do this deal. And of course, I don't borrow 99% of what that asset's worth. I never borrow more than 65%. I average borrowing like 55%.
That's exact same with us. Our average loan.
And that's a large part 50%. Why you go non-recourse is because you don't owe a whole lot. The way things go. So that's one of the things that's a reason why I can have 26 million of private people's money, because I was selling them the same way you're selling them. This is a perfectly good asset backing this up. And if I'm not right, then you're going to get it. My personal word to you is you won't have to fight me for it. If I can't pay you, I'll bring it to you. I'll Federal Express.
If you go back on your word, which you never would, but if you did, they can still get it. And so that, it's a no-brainer. And if you look at it too, this is the thing that I think people don't understand is there's this weird mentality. It's like, well, when I'm big like you, I'll do that. And I'm like, you don't understand. That's not how it works. It's not like people, I love it when people say, well, yeah, if I had millions of dollars, I would invest. And you're like, how do you get millions of dollars? That doesn't even make sense. Like, the action equals the result. So even if you're doing single family homes, even if you're doing, it doesn't matter. You can do things to make this work. The same principles apply. And that's how you get bigger, right? That's how you get more. That's how you've grown. That's how you get 1,000 houses plus storage facilities.
Well, so yeah, everyone I know started broke, including you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone starts out broke. So, when you don't have money, and I'm a simple man, so I have to have things simply put to me, and I have to see things very simply so that I can get out there and get it. I'm not a genius, but I have a huge amount of common sense, and I have a huge work ethic. And I have a huge integral part of me that just won't let me fail, because I know if I give houses back to people, even though I have the right to, they're not going to loan me money anymore. So I will eat, you know, if I have a house that's not working, I'll write the check myself, because I don't need to damage my reputation with these people that are my lifeblood. You know what I mean?
Bingo.
And I got, you know, so unless I just got in a corner where I had to, but even then I could walk up to those people and go, look, we're down to two choices. The money's not coming in. I can hand you the deed, or you could postpone some payments till I can get this crap straightened out. And of course, all these doctors and lawyers, everybody goes, please just handle it, you know. And it wouldn't be over a frivolous thing. It'd be because some economic situation caused it, because I'm not causing it. You know what I mean? And that's one of the reasons I like non-recourse, and that I made it a staple to not have recourse money, is because when you sign your name on that dotted line, you are signing for anything and everything that could happen in this world, including nuclear bombs from Kim Jong dumbass, or terrorism, or planes flying into buildings, or meteors, or
Bernie Sanders, or whatever else.
It's like, who am I to guarantee that? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I can only guarantee so much. So I set up my loan so that I only had to guarantee that so much. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's so that I could sleep, because my biggest fear in the world was that, you know, I started with family and friends, that I would let them down. And I had to come up with a plan where I could not that it was impossible for me to let them down. And the non-recourse loan was the answer to that. I could do one of two things. I pay as agreed, or I can hand you the deed. Either way, it was right in line with our agreement. Now, I know there's ramifications for handing out the deed, but at least my name was not besmudged. You know what I mean?
Yes. At least they ended up saying, no, I got the asset.
Well, because what happens is, if it ever went upside down, they say, I don't want the asset by myself. We're better off as a team. Just I'll do my part and not require a payment right now. Let's wait for it to turn, or let's wait, you know.
Yeah, you're in it together.
Yeah, we're in it together, and they'll work with you. You know, the banks, they don't even have the authority to work with you if you don't have the agreement, right?
Yes. Well, and what you're saying too is really important to understand and remember, that it's not even so much the asset that's the value, it's the relationship. And so your incentives are on them. They're the reasons you're in business. It's not even the houses, it's them. And so you're incentivized to make sure those people are whole, because if you mess up, or if you screw those people that are investing with you, then your business model's over.
Bad news travels at light speed. Good news is a snail pace, and bad news travels at light speed. So one of my points was about being broke was, when you don't have money, you're really just a professional deal finder. You know, if you can go find a property at 50 cents off, and then you have to learn how to paper up that contract so that you have something solid, you know, you have some rights, you know, with several days or months before you have to close. And now you just walk around with this fantastic deal over your head, you know, and you take your legs and you walk, and then you got your voice like a megaphone going, look, I got this deal, 50 cents on the dollar. Who wants to split the profit with me? And then someone will say, well, I want to. What do I got to do? And you say, bring the friggin' money. Yeah. I got the deal. You bring the money. We'll be 50-50. And 50% of something is a whole lot better than 100% of nothing. And you don't have to do it forever until you can start to choose whether you want partners or not. There was times when I could fund my own deals anyways, but I wanted the partners because it was just it was a good choice. They had talents, they had resources, they helped lighten the load for me. They were a hedge against, you know, risk. Because they had certain talents. So a lot of times when I could buy deals, even myself, I would pick a partner.
I'm doing that right now.
Especially if it was out of my
deals myself, but I'm not.
Especially if it was out of my comfort zone or in a different genre, then I don't want to go into a different genre by myself and have to learn everything that a guy that's already been in the genre already knows. I would rather partner with that guy, and then I learn, and maybe next time I do something in that genre, I don't need the partner. But then by that time, things are running so smooth and you're such good partners, it's like, shit, let's do another one, you know, together, you know? Yes.
Bingo. No, and when you look at too, you hit on something really important that I tell people all the time. Money's the least important part of the process. Money's actually the easiest thing to do.
If you have a good deal, right?
If you have a good deal, you can fund it all day long. If you've done the work and if you have a good deal, or you can pull it off, or whatever those things are, that's what most people don't have. Right now, there's more money, and money's being invented every day and printed off, and people have it stacked in, you know, computers endlessly. That is just, there's no limit to it. There's none, zero. It's infinite. It's made up. There's nothing to it. What's limited is opportunity. What's limited is deals. What everybody wants is those things. Money's just how they acquire them. So if you can bring that, you've taken care of the problem that everybody has.
So I have a course called Private Money Changes Everything. And the first thing that everyone has to solve is their mindset. They think, well, I don't have a degree, or I haven't been in this business that long. I don't have a track record. Why would anyone loan me money? I'm too young. I'm too fat. I have bad credit. There's all these reasons, and I hear this all the time. And then I just have to, I let them go on with all the reasons why they can't. And then I say, okay, you done? And they say, yeah. I said, you give yourself way too much credit. No one gives a crap about you. Charles Manson should have been able to get a loan on this place. You know what I mean? I don't care how many people he murdered, because if Charles Manson doesn't pay him, they're going to get the asset. They don't care what he was or who he was. I mean, exactly. Maybe that's a little over the top, but you know what I mean?
But the point is true. It is. And then people ask, and so I used to ask the same thing. I'm like, how did these idiots get money? Who's giving these people money? These guys are morons. And of course they were going to screw them, or all these things. And that's the reason why. And so if you're a good person that has integrity and that will do a good job and you have work ethic, then you're going to explode just like you have and just like others have, because it's not rocket science. Don't make it rocket science.
People said, how did you get so much money for these houses? I said, I paid people back. Word spread.
Bingo. Exactly. Exactly. No, I love that.
Yeah. So you wrote a book. It's called Growing Wealth in Self-Storage. It's a bestseller book. Hold it up there. You got a copy of it?
Yeah, I actually do. Yep. It's the ultimate playbook, The Investor's Guide to Growing Wealth in Self-Storage. It's blue. Apparently there's another one out there that has a similar title, but mine's blue.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you guys to go to 1000houses.com/ self-storage AJ. Self-storage AJ, and that'll get you to the show notes, and there'll be ways or information about that book. AJ's not selling anything. I don't think. You're not counseling or anything. He may want to know about your storage that you're trying to sell, or you might have a deal on it. I don't know. But anyways, all his contact information, whatever he wants you to know, will be over there. So you start out, what was your storage facility? How big or small? What was the first one like?
It was really small. It was
mine was 15. Mine was 15 units in front of an entrance to a Comel Park, which was on the lake where I live, and the fishermen would store their little fishing boats so they didn't have to drag them around all the time.
Bingo. It was literally the place where we were. There's more grizzly bears than there are people there in Idaho. So it was on the dirt. It was, and from there we just kept moving up. And two, I really don't want to make it more complicated than it is. And I think that's one of the big problems people have. They overthink it. Look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie, right? If it's a good deal, it's a good deal. In fact, too, a lot of people don't understand. This is the weird thing. You talk about this mentality part, and everybody's like, well, when I get big, I'll go start buying big assets. Well, I got to tell you right now, it is way harder for me to find an 80,000 square foot, $6 million storage facility that's a good deal than it is if I went to find a 5,000 square foot storage in a third tier market. That's easy. That's easy to find a good deal doing that. If you're starting out, there's way more opportunity because you're not competing with all the big guys.
I was buying the mom and pops, class B, class C, and then I was improving or changing them, putting in an electronic gate, putting up a camera or whatever, bringing it up a little bit. The thing was, at the time in my mindset, and of course, you don't just go from zero to a $10 million facility. I mean, being real, but it's actually easier to borrow $1 million than it is to borrow 100,000. Because banks don't want to dick around with a $100,000 loan. No. They want a $2 or $3 million loan. They go, okay, you got my attention. What do you got?
The bigger the money is, the easier it's to get. The smaller the deal is, the more opportunity there is to find them, because opportunity concentrates at those, right? You get low cap rates, and because there's more financing and because more people want bigger deals. So when I look at it and you start talking about financing and buying these smaller deals and facilities, I say you go to community banks, you go to local city banks, you go to credit unions, because they have a very good understanding of the area you're in and the true value of what you're doing. They're looking at you, the asset, and they have to deploy money in that market. So they have to do it. And so like when we started out and when we started looking and we were buying assets, the big national banks were like, this is out in the middle of nowhere. Are you kidding? Do people even live there? And then we go talk to the Citibank or the local credit union, and they're like, hey, that's a great piece of property you got there. It's on the main road into the city, right? It's like you're having two totally different conversations. And so you just got to remember that there's a model, and two, that local people, so if you're in a small city and you have a doctor that lives in that city and a dentist, they want to deploy money next to them. They want to deploy it close by. Now, they don't want to go do all the work, and they don't want to run a storage facility. But
they understand it. Like,
yes.
They know if you're right in the middle of the growth pattern of this city, in another 5 years or 10 years, it's going to be right there. I mean, that's a good asset.
Exactly.
Storages have been famous for just holding land until the city got to it. I mean, that's
how they started. It was a land hold.
Yeah.
They were literally just holding land until somebody was going to develop apartments, a hotel, or something that was actually worth something, as they used to think. And now they're incredibly valuable. But it's, when you start out small, like I say, look at your tenants. Who's renting out of that storage facility? Because if they got a nice boat and if they're renting, they have some disposable income. I'm sure your tenants understand the value of it. Maybe they'll lend you the money, right?
That's some of my favorite tenants was the boat storage ones, because, the boats these days are $80, $90, $120, $180,000, and they're parked in there. And if they don't make their payment on your storage, or they don't, you're locking up this boat. And the bank is, a lot of times these things are financed, and the bank has to pay the back rent before they can get their collateral out of your storage. So it's kind of you got two payers ultimately. Maybe. Yes. In Texas, we can foreclose on a storage if we're Johnny on the spot and file the paperwork right the minute that you can. We can foreclose on a storage in 31 days. We can be having the auction. Yep,
that's most of the country. The laws for storage are obviously extremely favorable. I tell people, think about it like this: if your neighbor comes to you and says, "Hey, I need to put something in your driveway. I'll pay you $10 a month," and you say, "Okay, great." And then 3 months later, you're like, hey, Bob, I don't want your stuff in my yard anymore. Take it. No bank no law system in their right mind would ever think that guy has rights to your land. That's how it's viewed. No, it's your land. They're putting their stuff on your land. The moment you want them gone, you get them rid of them. And that has been reinforced in the United States over and over and over again.
Yeah, we don't have to go
living on it.
In a house, you might have to, in some states, you got to go in front of a judge and justify why you're kicking these people out. No one gives a damn about storage.
Nobody does.
And by the way, it's been my experience, and I just got to ask you this. There's really not been any real coups in storage auctions that I know of. I mean, everyone sees these storage wars and think there's all these monies in these units. It's a bunch of shit most of the time. You know what I mean?
No, we lose money if we got to take people to auction to sell their stuff off. We lose money.
We actually call them. Look, you owe me $400. Can you just give me $150 and get your stuff out?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, I'll take anything. Just get out.
I don't want to be responsible. It's going to cost me $150 or $200 to get it emptied and take it to the trash.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to waste a lot of time because we're just curious, and I do want to know what's in the drawer.
Yeah. But no, you're exactly right. People think like you make money by selling people. That does not happen. You only lose money. You lose money because they're not paying you. Then you have to take care of it, which is expensive.
Trash is
if nobody will buy that crap in that unit, and that's the reason we auction it. We auction it so somebody will pay us to remove the crap. That's why. And guess what? The auction sells for a fraction of what they owe. So for us, if we just don't have to pay more money, we're happy.
Someone says,
but we don't make money.
They say, isn't there an income stream there? He says, it's not what I do.
No.
That's not what I do. That's not what I do. Let someone else buy that thing for $400. If they get lucky and they make $2,000 because they found a Rolex watch band or something there, good for them. Good for them. They don't.
That's the thing, though. It's like a myth.
I know.
People don't leave $2,000 in storage units, right? The storage war stuff, everything like that, it's fun, but it's not reality. I can't tell you how many units I've auctioned off, but I've never seen a unit auctioned off that had something that was, I'm like, that's valuable.
I mean, I've seen a couple where they got lucky on a couple things, but you know, they had to go through a lot of units maybe they lost money on too. So it's kind of like that gambler that goes to Vegas and tells you about what he won when he wins, but he doesn't tell you when he lost.
All the loses. It is. It really is. People do it because of the thrill. But
well, they're gamblers. They're gamblers. It's a gambler addiction.
They're
right?
looking for buried treasure. It's just, it's not exactly. And it's not a moneymaker for you as a storage owner.
Yeah. I call it stay in your lane, man. Figure out where your deal is and stay in your lane. There's a lot of, and someone will come up with another shiny object or another way to do something. It's like, if you're doing good, just multiply what you got. Stay in your lane. It took me a long time to learn that.
It's hard.
So tell me, hold up your book again. Someone reads this book, what can they get out of it? What are they going to get out of it?
So I literally called it the step-by-step playbook for turning a real estate asset into a thriving storage business, because it is. It is a step-by-step. I go over everything: conversions, building, buying, managing, operating. I give our checklists. I give how our strategy, our value-add strategy, how to find deals, how to underwrite, how to judge markets, demand. Like it's the largest self-storage book on the market. It's the best-selling stuff. I mean, we beat storage books that have been on the market for 10 years in a matter of weeks. So people are loving it. It has a perfect review. It has more reviews than any other book and has a perfect review. And the reason being is it's not a funnel. I'm not selling the book so you read it and have to buy something. I'm selling it because I was sitting in the hospital and as snow was falling down and I was going to go see what my kids were getting on Christmas. I said, I actually get to buy my kids Christmas. I have no job. I'm paralyzed. And so I said, I'm going to write a book on the asset that allowed me to do that and why I get to do it. And that's it. And I know because I give and people read and receive, I get back. People have brought me deals because they go, you've shown me exactly what to do. I've got a $6 million asset here in Kansas City. I've read your book. It fits your criteria. I can't do it. How about you come and do this deal and I ride along with you? Great. Awesome. I'm closing in 2 weeks. So there is benefit to me. I get more well-known. People know my business model. They bring me deals.
You get credibility, outstanding
credibility.
That
exactly.
People didn't even know.
Exactly.
What I love about you is what a red-ass entrepreneur. He's paralyzed in bed and he says, I got to do something with his time. And he writes a book that furthers his career. Maybe never would have written a book in his life, except he got put in that corner where there wasn't anything else to do about it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I don't know, my book's not been sold nearly as many copies of whatever, but I know that writing this book took me a completely different direction. It took me in places I would never go. I met people I would have met. People know my name from one end of this country to the other. Not that I'm famous by any stretch of the imagination, but I can go places and people say, I read your book, and there's a connection. I have private money come from miles away. I mean, thousands of miles away now. I mean, the last one was in Tennessee. So I read your books. That made me follow you on the podcast. I feel like I know you.
Yes.
I feel like you're consistent because when we talk about right or wrong, you always take the high road. He says, I feel like I know who you are. I said, well, if you've read my books and listened to my podcast, you do know who I am because I'm not fabricating myself. I'm being myself. And
well, so think about this.
He came down. He flew. The next day he's in my office and loaned me $1 million.
Exactly. Because if I tried to sit down with thousands and thousands and thousands of people and explain my strategy on investing in self-storage,
you'd be exhausted.
I would never be able to do anything in my entire life. And I've already completed that in 2 months, right? So there is over 5,000 people that in 5 weeks completely understand my strategy and what I like and what I'm looking for in self-storage. I mean, it condenses time and it gets your word out and it lets you know what you believe in, who you are, and how you do what you do. That's obviously inherently beneficial.
Say something to the people out there that own a business that have been contemplating writing a book, but they just haven't got off their ass yet to do it. So what do you say to them?
Just do it. I mean, I can't even it's hard. It's not easy. It's like, it takes a lot of time, but there's a process in writing the book that creates this, that you conceptualizing, putting into words and drawing a roadmap that helps you more than it helps the readers.
Yeah. You kind of straighten your own crap out.
You do.
And you know what I mean?
You do.
By the way, if you're thinking about writing the book, I didn't do this. I should have. I took a course from a guy named David Essel, who I've interviewed, and he'll talk to you about writing a book. The guy's wrote a lot of books. But you got to spend the upfront time is on the outline. And so you have completely mapped out. Don't start writing until it's, exactly, you wouldn't start driving. If you needed to get to a certain place, you wouldn't start driving without looking at a map. You got to map out where you're going in this thing and then rearrange it. And if it's in timelines, make sure your timelines are right. If it has to do with monetary progression, make sure that's in order. But just bust your ass on the outline, chapter, and then the 5 or 6 points that you're going to write about in that chapter, and then the next chapter. And once you have that straight, that's half the battle. It's half the battle of writing a book.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, my friend, you've spent a lot of time with me, and I want to
happy to do it.
I don't want to abuse you here, but you sound like a fun guy. Do you ever come to San Antonio?
I do occasionally, yes. So I like San Antonio a lot. My actual name is Austin James Osborne, even though if you called me Austin, I would have no idea. Like I wouldn't even respond to it in a room. But I was named after Austin, Texas. So my dad wishes he was a Texan. So
okay. So I want to talk to you after this. So don't hang up when we get off here.
Sounds great.
I'd like to thank everybody for stopping by to get you some AJ Osborne. I'd like to thank you for taking the time and hearing what he had to say. Please check out his book, Storage is a Fine Business. I did it on the side forever. And I wasn't paying attention. I would just throw it over there. I'd buy the next mom and pop place, and then I would run away and start doing houses. Then I had some money and I'd go do an expansion on one of the places, and then I'd run away and I'd go do houses. I looked up one day and it was what was making my financial. My sideline had become my everything. I mean, been the biggest part of my everything. And it just happened. And I wasn't even really focusing on it like AJ has. I mean, I was just doing it as a side job. And, I have about 1,300 doors that send me on an average $100 a month. That's $130,000 a month. Now, I don't get to keep it all, but I get to keep a crap load of it. Okay. I've been doing it since 1991. I don't have a lot of that debt's gone away or expired. And I'm not really one to like borrow up for no reason. If I borrow up, I'm buying something else that's going to pay for that debt. So,
yes.
It was a great lifestyle. It's a relatively simple business to sub out. It's not rocket science, or I like to say it's not rocket surgery. Even someone like me can do it. It's pretty well A, B, C, D, E, F, G on most all situations. Only thing I would tell anybody that was going in new or anything, just make sure you have some wrongful disposal insurance, just in case you get rid of the wrong unit, or someone accuses you of getting rid of the wrong unit, or you don't foreclose right and you get rid of something. That would be the only thing. Because one time I said, hey, I need you to empty out, unit number 9, and he thought I said 5. That's why they say niner, and that's why they say niner in the military, right? Because 9 gets confused with 5. I told him, empty out unit 9, and he went and emptied out unit 5. And of course, now, John Lennon's one photo of whatever worth $1 million was in there, and there was 27 Rolexes in there, and there was a gold thing off of King Tut's,
exactly.
Was in there.
You make a mistake, and that unit had $1 billion in it.
Yeah. So, all right, my friend, I appreciate your time. I'd like to thank taxfreefuture.com for being the sponsor today. Please go see taxfreefuture.com. You won't believe what your financial advisors are not telling you. We're going to tell you what they're not telling you. We're going to tell you why they're not telling you. And then you can do with what you want with that information. But it's a real eye-opener if you've never known about these kind of tax-free or tax-deferred accounts to grow your wealth in. All right. Thanks a bunch. This is Mitch Stephen, 1000houses.com podcast. We're out of here.